Product Breakfast Club. Product Breakfast Club. Product Breakfast Club.
Product Breakfast Club. I'm kind of doing the Bowie version. Product Breakfast Club.
I don't have any singing like voices I can do. That was really good. I'm not going to compete.
Hello. This is Jonathan Courtney. It's too close for comfort.
I think people may not realize that this wasn't a podcast recorded by David Bowie. We should stop immediately.
I will stop. I'll never do that again. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Product Breakfast Club podcast, the number 4 product-related podcast in the iTunes store. How do you like that, Jake?
That sounds like faint praise, because what are the other ones? I mean, I didn't even know there were any other podcasts about products. Apparently, there's 4 of them.
Here's the thing. What mostly happens is that people give up on podcasts like this because they run out of topics. I can see, like, when I search for product, there's a few kind of like product management ones in there, but it seems like they don't get updated. They just kind of die after a while because they're like, why the hell did we start something like this?
Are some of those ahead of us, the ones that have died?
Yeah, unfortunately, because they have like 200 episodes and stuff, but
okay.
There are not so many. We're also not that far down when you look for like designy, kind of innovation-y related things. If more people would review the podcast, I think probably we'd be higher up. So buy Sprint.
I think the way you're supposed to do this strategically is we're supposed to give them something good. We're supposed to share something useful, and then at the end we kind of ask.
Oh,
so we should do that first.
So if this is the first episode that you're listening to, and we've already asked you to review the podcast, it's always someone's first episode, Jake. You should be thinking about that. Every single episode, it's always someone's first episode. So let's talk to this person. What is this podcast? Who are you? Who am I?
I'm Jake. I'm a designer and writer, and wannabe writer, really, sort of an aspiring writer. What about you, John? Who are you?
I'm also Jake, but I'm the one who actually... No, I'm Jonathan. I run a design agency in Berlin called Aj&Smart. Jake, you kind of left out the bit that you are a New York Times best-selling writer, and you're saying that you're an aspiring writer. That's going to be pretty insulting to all these people out here who don't have, like, for example, me, who writes stuff, and I don't have that stamp that I can put on my forehead like you do.
Well, you know, there's 2 things you should know. 1, it sounds so much better when you say it, when you insist on saying it. That's really nice. But 2, I mean, I was thinking about this because I do introduce myself as a writer, and I have to say that, like, when I go through... I'm filling out a form or something. I say that's my job now. But I've written 1 book, and it's about design. I have another book coming out, but when that other book comes out, there'll be a point in time when I can comfortably say I'm a writer, but I think it's not exactly true yet.
Okay, I understand. Like at this point, you can say you're a designer because you've been working on products for the last like 300 years, but you can't really say you're a writer, or you can't really say you're a swimmer if you swam once, right?
You probably could. It's just about how it feels. It doesn't feel quite right.
Can I do my intro again then?
Sure, yeah.
Hey, my name is Jonathan. I am a swimmer, originally from Ireland, and basically what I do most of the time is I swim around.
Is that how you got to Berlin from Ireland?
I swam.
Actually, can you swim? Berlin's inland. Is it possible to swim all the way?
It's extremely far inland. No, you can do it. I think you could do it, especially if you're a swimmer like me. If you kind of got the deep sea swim skills that I've been building up my entire life. I actually can't really swim very well. We've done 2 episodes in a row that were extremely short and tight, like 15 minutes long, 17 minutes long. We'll try to keep this one short as well, but I have a feeling it's going to be baggy.
Yeah, the introduction is already pushing 5 minutes, so that 15-minute goal is questionable, whether we're going to get there today. There's a meta topic for us to talk about before we talk about anything else. There's a meta topic, which is the 16th episode of the podcast. And that's noteworthy for a reason that was not obvious to me before we started doing the podcast. This is something you learned. Tell me more about that. Why is this a big deal?
So I was talking to your friend Kevin Rose, and he has a super popular codcast. He mostly talks about fish.
Codcast. That's the weird thing. He's number 1 in the codcast category. There's not a lot of
Why didn't we do that?
We should have thought of that.
You know, everybody thinks Kevin Rose is just super popular because he's good at what he does. But it's just because he finds these niches like codcast and just like owns it.
Just owns it. If you want to hear about cod, I mean, he dominates. It's a monopoly.
Oh,
God, the guy is so good.
Kevin Cod, they call him. So he probably won't appreciate this. I was just starting out the Product Breakfast Club when I started talking to Kevin Rose, doing a project with him at the moment. actually hoping to get him on the podcast here. But he told me, you know what? Don't worry about like the format or what your podcast is about or like getting too into like all the quality problems for the first 16 episodes. Just go for it. Just see what it feels like. Because 16 episodes in and it's still fucked. So
you told me that pretty early on, and it did give me a lot of confidence as we were going because we didn't know what we're doing, but we still don't know what we're doing. Although we do have this idea now. I'm excited about the segments idea for the podcast. I think that's going to be good. So I know you're not so excited yet, but I think it's going to be good. But today we're going to try one of those segments. In fact, this is going to be a short podcast with just one segment. And the segment for today is the interview with a founder segment. We sort of did this when we talked to Jason Fried. We sort of did this, but it wasn't called that yet. So now we have a name for it. We probably should have some intro music or something.
Can we do that with our mouths, though? The intro music.
Yeah. Should we agree or should we just...
No, let's do it. Let's just do it.
Okay.
Welcome to Foundercast.
Foundercast. You just named it Foundercast while I was bebopping? God, man, I don't know if that's a good name.
I saw this thing, this guy, I can't remember what it was called. And we are in the segment now, but I just want to tell you this one thing. There's this guy, he runs this thing called a Swolecast, like swole as in swollen. And it's not like about being like a sore or a growth. It's like muscles, right?
Wow.
And at the start of one episode that I watched, because I was trying to like look at some dietary things, he was like, welcome to the Swolecast. And then everything he saw around him, he put the word cast after. So it was like coffee cast, flag cast, arm cast, microphone cast. He just couldn't think of what to talk about. So he just kept saying those things. So I think the way we should name our segments is just like the word that we think the segment is about and then the word cast after it.
That's
Foundercast.
Well, we'll try it for today. This is the founder. Well, what's interesting for us about talking to founders is you can't think about designing a product. You can't think about like starting something new unless you talk to people who've done it and figure out what they're thinking about. And I think a lot of times for designers, we get too into design and we don't talk to founders.
True.
But the curveball today with the inaugural interview with a founder, I'm going to interview you about founding Aj&Smart.
Nice.
I know you thought I was going to bring on like a famous founder
Jason Fried
right now, but I'm not. It's just you, man. You're on. So Aj&Smart, it's an agency. Take me back to what you're doing before Aj&Smart. Actually, no, wait. Let's go way back because I met your mom at a workshop we did in Berlin. And your mom told me about your family business when you were a kid. So you've actually been in business since you were a kid. You're in Ireland. What is the family business when you were a kid?
First of all, I just want to express my gratitude for being on the Foundercast. It's really been a dream of mine for years, listening in to all these great founders. Okay, so yeah, it's interesting. So my family, it's a family of entrepreneurs. Nobody in my family ever worked for somebody else. My mom and dad always kind of started and invented their own businesses. And the first one that I was working at from a very young age, potentially illegally young age. Don't worry, there's no laws in the Foundercast.
Or in Ireland.
I was... That's true. Oh, sure, he's fine. If he can stand up, he's old enough to work. So I was working at Blarney Castle. And if anyone doesn't know what Blarney Castle is, it's this castle in Cork City in Ireland where a lot of Americans and Japanese tourists go to kiss this stone. And when you kiss this stone, it gives you what we call the gift of the gab, which basically means it gives you the gift of being able to speak eloquently like me and like Irish people.
You have made out with that stone.
Yeah. It was just the stone. Before I kissed the stone, it was full-on leprechaun accent. I had a cat, yes, cat. And then I kissed it, and this is what popped out. So I was working there for like 5 years, and then my parents were also running like a photography studio. They were also running every Christmas like a Santa in a mall. I think you guys have that in America as well, when you go to the mall to see Santa and like sit on his lap and then get the picture taken. My parents were running a few of these and...
Wait, I have to interrupt you for a second. First thing, when people say the Blarney Stone, I think they're being offensive to Irish people, that's not even a real thing.
No, it is.
Not only is it a real thing, you actually worked there.
Yeah, I worked there for like 7 years.
That is amazing. When I'm going to tell other people about that in the future, they're going to think I'm just insulting you as an Irish person. That's actually true. Okay, so the Santa thing, I want to go into that. Who's Santa? Who's playing Santa in those situations?
Usually a drunk friend of my parents. I think that nobody who is involved in this is going to listen to the podcast, so I'll just tell the truth. Usually, basically that.
So with the photography studio, with the Santa thing, is this something were you involved in those as well growing up? Or do you just kind of see that as the model?
No, I was working there. I mean, in the Blarney Stone, I was the photographer, I was the tour guide. I was also selling. So I was the guy at the stand trying to sell the photographs, like trying to convince Americans to buy 3 instead of 2. So I was involved in selling and trying to, hustle at a very, very young age. And that never really stopped for me, to be honest, because then it kept going.
True. I mean, you're always trying to sell me 3 photos instead of 2. It's like,
come on, man, just buy it. I took a photo of you and you won't buy it. I don't understand it.
By the way, what is the stereotype of Americans in Cork City? You're growing up, you got American tourists coming in to see the Blarney Stone. Do Irish people care about the Blarney Stone?
No, not really. I mean, Irish people will visit it. There are some rumors that people pee on it in the middle of the night. And also, I'm pretty sure those rumors are all true. Yeah, I shouldn't tell you this, but it's a thing that happens, right? Like people break into the castle. I mean, that's such an Irish thing. Oh, sure, let's break into the castle while we're drunk and piss on a stone. So, I mean, the stereotype of Americans this was around the time, I guess it was pre-George Bush. This was kind of Clinton era. We just thought they were stupid because we were like, Cork is a little village, right? We don't know any other cultures. We're very kind of closed off from the world. It's just Irish people. And then an American comes along with their super loud, oh my God. Like this noise, like it's something we hadn't experienced before. So we just kind of saw Americans as like gullible and comical, I would say. It hasn't changed.
There's some truth to that, I guess. We are gullible and comical. Actually, speaking of breaking into the castle, I just want to go on a tangent here. We just got back from the Nordic tour. You and me were in the Nordics. And one little theme of the places that I visited was these Swedish military things that they had done that were really poorly planned. I'm just going to throw this out there in case it's some future podcast we want to come back to this. But in Helsinki, so Sweden used to, not that long ago, I guess, but control Finland. Their big adversary at the time was Russia, or one of them. And they built this giant fortress outside of Helsinki, which is kind of how Helsinki, I think, really started growing from being like a little village. And they built this fortress on this island off of Helsinki, and it was meant to protect from if the Russians came in by water. It was like this amazing, like the second biggest fortress after Gibraltar. It was just a huge thing. And then they forgot that in the winter, the sea freezes. And the Russians ended up just walking right across the ice right past the fort. So that was one thing. And then the other thing is in Stockholm, they've got this giant ship called the Vasa. Like 300 years ago, they built this giant ship. And they put it out in the harbor and it just immediately sunk because they hadn't really thought about how to counterbalance all the cannons. And then later they pulled it up and they have a museum about it. And it's a great museum, but it's funny because it's sort of something that you'd hope they would have caught in a sprint. Anyway, that's the end of that tangent. We can go back now to
by sprint.
We'll go back by sprint. We'll go back.
If they had bought Sprint, none of this would have happened. Russia wouldn't have invaded.
Yeah.
Shit.
So if anyone has a way to contact the Swedes in, let's say, the 1500s or 1600s and get them at least one copy of Sprint, I think it could make a big difference. But we might all be living in Sweden if that had happened. They might have taken over the whole world.
I honestly think that you're just telling me right now that your book would have been more important than the Bible had it been released earlier.
That is essentially what I'm saying.
I thought this was the Founder Cast.
Yeah, I hijacked it for a second. Okay, back to the Founder Cast. So, were there more businesses continuing on, or by the time you go to college, or what?
Yeah, I didn't even mention Tunnel World. So, Tunnel World was a business that I was running. Hell yes. Tunnel World was a business that I was running between the age of 8 and about 12, where I was bringing people from my classroom for 20 pence. This was Irish money. I would invite them to come to my backyard where I had dug a lot of holes. They could basically kind of walk through these tunnels, which I had built with some friends, and give me 20 pence.
And you dug tunnels big enough that people could go in them.
We dug holes and then put wood slats over it and then put like mud over that so you could walk through these or crawl through these tunnels and get really filthy and have really angry parents afterwards.
How old were you again?
I was still in primary school, so before, probably around like 9 or 10.
9 or 10. You've started a business digging tunnels.
And I had another business selling fish to my neighbors. So I would go
You could
fishing.
have had the codcast.
Yeah,
I mean, it was right there. It was obvious.
They were mackerel, but and I also had a physical newsletter that I was writing, maybe at around the age of 12, horribly writing and putting into the door of all of my neighbors' houses, but also a way to remind them about the fish situation, just so that they wouldn't be so surprised when I come with the fish and it's like, that will be €2.
So was it kind of a jab hook thing where you like had some content and it was kind of content marketing? Like at the end, you're like,
yeah,
also.
Pre-Gary V. It's like, read this joke story that I wrote, and also here's a shitload of fish and I need you to buy them because they're rotting.
Where did you get the fish?
I would go fishing. I would catch like a lot of mackerel, and then I would bring the mackerel in like a big bag. And then I would put them on plates. They would be in my apartment, my house.
Santa.
Oh,
okay.
Stinky Santa is what they used to call me. So yeah, man, I was always looking for a way to make money when I was younger, and it just never really stopped.
So that's interesting. I mean, think of all the reps you had with selling stuff.
Yes.
I mean, even by the time you were in high school. Did you go to college?
Yeah, I went to college.
So tell us about that. What was going on then?
So I actually wanted to be either an illustrator, so like a comic book illustrator, or an animator. I did a course that kind of had everything in it. And I ended up actually wanting to be a filmmaker when I finished college. That's when I moved to Berlin, was to be a filmmaker. I'd studied design psychology, photography, programming, all of this kind of stuff. It was one of those just like everything digital courses.
Had you been into computers, into any of this stuff before going to college?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually like, I was making animated movies and showing them to my classmates when I was in, like, as soon as I got a computer, I figured out how to like scan in images and make those into like animated shorts. And then I figured out how to use Maya. So like I was making like 3D animations, and I also figured out how to use that to like record music and stuff. So I was like full on computer obsessed nerd. As soon as we got a computer, I was like trying to figure out how to make stuff with it. And that's why I went to that course. That's why I went to a course called like digital media production, because I just wanted to play with computers. Oh, I also wanted to be a video game designer. I kind of still do, but that's like another story.
So by the time you get to Berlin, you're thinking film.
At the point I moved to Berlin, I had spent like the last year and a half working on my first short film. I had like a film crew, almost like my first post-college company was a film crew of like 15 people who were all wanted to work on a new film that I wanted to make.
Okay, wait, I'm gonna pause you right there, because for a lot of people like me, maybe, I don't know what a film crew, I don't know what that means. I don't really know. Like, first of all, what kind of movies are you interested in making at that time?
Like dark comedies, like short dark comedies. And myself and Kyle, the guy who's now our finance guy at Aj&Smart. So he was first in the band with me. Like everybody, I was in a band.
What kind of band was it?
And we were like a funk rock band. That was actually also the first time I traveled. It was because me, Kyle, Alex, who was the original founder of Aj&Smart with me, and another guy, we were traveling around Europe with the band. We never got famous, by the way, or successful, or made even €1. It was very bad. I mean, the thing that was the commonality of my entire existence has been I've always had like a crew of people around me to work on projects. And Aj&Smart was just one of the crews that happened to make money, right? That was the difference with all of those sort of things that I worked on.
Did that idea of having a crew around you to do these projects, did that start after college when you started doing the film stuff, or was that going on even in like high school?
The entire 6 years while I was in high school, I was always making movies and animations, and it was always like a group of people, and usually I was like the director. I mean, it's just an ego problem, really, that I carried with me the way till today. Yeah, and actually the only reason Aj&Smart happened was because while I was working on film sets to work my way up in the film industry, to make money, because film makes you shit money at the start, I was doing design work. And the reason I knew how to do design work is because I had been designing like the band posters, like, you know, the cover art for people's movies. And I had studied design psychology, and I knew how to make web pages for all the random businesses that my parents had. And I also knew how to program them. So I was kind of that was the way I was making money. I was making websites for people, which then slowly turned into making apps for people, which then slowly transitioned into Aj&Smart, basically.
And you said there was some overlap with the film company, the film crew. Was the film crew originally set up to make a movie concept that you had or film concepts that you had, or were you doing work for other people? What did that look like?
Yeah, myself and Kyle had written a script for a TV show. We'd written 6 episodes and we were trying to get BBC and Channel 4 to buy it. In the end, we were just like, fuck it, we're just going to make it ourselves. And the crew of my previous film, which is a movie you can actually watch online right now, it's called The Legend of Johnny King. It's not great, but it's like very high quality and you can see that it was an effort.
I'm looking that up right now. If you hear typing, is it important to write the in order to find it?
I think so. I found like random documentaries about this like jazz musician called Johnny King. Yeah, so a lot of those people were then living in Frankfurt, and I was kind of like telling them that I was almost ready with this movie and that I was setting up a time to start shooting it. And then Aj&Smart just sort of started by accident, and it just like all fell by the wayside, all the movie shooting. The movie stuff comes back every year or two, like in terms of like I get excited about it, but it just hasn't really, I haven't made another movie since Johnny King. Did you find it?
Well, I don't know, maybe. I might have to ask you to tell me how to spell it later. But there's a couple things I want to ask you about. First thing was this idea of like movies coming back, that you continue to come back to it. Do you feel like what you're doing now is sort of, I mean, does it feel right to you?
It's a really interesting question. It's something I've been kind of asking myself nonstop for the last few months. I really do enjoy running Aj&Smart. Just to give people some context, we're like a 20-person company now. We're designing products for a lot of organizations. It is really, really interesting for me to build this machine, but I'm definitely lacking, let's say, completely unstructured, completely creative, non-client driven projects that even though maybe I won't finish them, I usually get a big kick out of trying them. And it's definitely been on my mind a lot. And last year, it kind of manifested itself in designing a video game, which you can also download on Steam if you actually play video games. It's called Airlock. And this was like unbelievably fun to work on something like this. And I think it's like, for me, over the next 5 years, I've kind of set myself the goal to be able to have Aj&Smart as a stable running business that's, you know, growing on its own, that's like high quality, and that like doesn't necessarily need me there orchestrating things on a weekly basis. And I would absolutely love to take Kyle and have like a 3-month sabbatical where we're just working on something purely creative that has potentially no intention of making any money whatsoever. I think I need to get it out of my system. Let's put it like that.
Well, maybe it is your system. I mean, it's also,
Oh!
you know.
All right, Dr. Phil.
Well, seriously, you know, like sometimes that stuff, it isn't just something you have to kind of like beat down, or like you may even find that over time, like the stuff you're doing at Aj&Smart fits in with that in the long term, or even that it is teaching you things that you'll use for doing that stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the Aj&Smart taking off. And I mean, it sounds like it wasn't a master plan, but that it just started to stick. Like you had product market fit, as we like to say.
Hey. Well, here's how it started. That's probably the most exciting thing of the entire story.
God, I was waiting for there to be at least one exciting thing.
I know, it's just like rambling bullshit and then let's go. I was working in a company called Aj in Berlin. I was the lead digital designer. Somehow I managed to get that job. If you're listening to this, Aj, thank you for trusting me, but you were wrong. I did not deserve that position. Because it was way ahead of what I could do, so I definitely was like every night trying to really learn like, what the hell, like how do you make an app? And I started learning about UX design. I started learning about user experience. People, please keep in mind, this was like 8 years ago or something like that. And it was like very fresh in terms of like, the user experience was understood, but user experience being applied to digital mobile products was really new.
Sidebar, maybe for you, John, but other places that had been going on for a while.
I disagree with it.
That's another topic. We'll save that for the Battle Royale segment
but
the next episode.
Battle Royale cast. No, but so for me, it was something that hadn't even come up in college. It hasn't even been mentioned. Of course, we'd read like the Don Norman book, The Design of Everyday Things. And of course, we'd understood like the Don't Make Me Think from Steve Krug thing. But just trying to understand like the sizes of mobile screens, like how do you even create these things was difficult. So I kind of like was dumped into the deep end as the lead designer there, also running a team of other people making other apps. It was insane. one of the people at the company who was freelancing there was Michael Smart, the guy who I ended up starting Aj&Smart with. And he was freelancing for another client. It was actually a college here in Berlin called the ESMT. We still do some work for them. And he came to me one day and he was like, yeah, there's this interesting project. I don't know, it seems a bit insane, but maybe we could do it. And I was like, what is it? And he was like, yeah, the governmental department for the environment wants this like crazy web app. And in the same way as like, just being too stupid to know how much work it is, both of us were just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's pitch for it. And I managed to also get my friend Alex, who was a programmer who was working at another company, to join the pitch. We won the pitch because nobody else would do it. Seriously, it wasn't just because we were good. Nobody else wanted to do it. And we ended up getting the job. We ended up giving them a bill for like 8,000 and they were like, no, we have our budget around 30,000. I was like, what the? Okay, yes, the bill is 30,000. And when we sent them the invoice, the 3 freelance invoices, the email we got back was, yeah, guys, you said you were a company. We can't really like accept freelance invoices. And my reply back was, no problem. Give me 2 days and I'll send you an invoice. So we literally like fucking legged it to the what's called a Finanzamt, where you actually create your company, spent the €70 to create the cheapest possible company type. And yeah, within a few days, sent them the bill as a company having no clue what to do. That's how we like officially started. The name Aj&Smart was like, it was between Aj&Smart, which I wanted it to be called, and Jam, like Jonathan, Alex, Michael. Michael wanted it to be called Jam. I ended up making business cards that said Aj&Smart on it. Michael was just like, fuck it, whatever. We went for Aj&Smart because in our minds, we were just going to probably close this company within a week anyway, once we got paid. We both just said, should we just try this out? Like, should we just see what it could be to run a company? We were both still working in our other companies. We both quit, even though we had no idea if we could make any more money.
Okay, wait a second. That's a huge moment.
Oh,
actually.
yeah.
That's a crazy feeling. So, not to get too personal, but are you married at that point? Or it's just you?
No, I was like 21 or something. So,
and I guess you're in Europe, so you probably have like healthcare no matter what.
Yeah, you can't be like poor.
Far. Right. Okay. So you have your state-sponsored vacations to Thailand and everything.
Exactly.
Already, so
it's actually not far from the truth, but yeah, you're right.
So, okay, but you decide, I'm going to give up this job.
I was fine with quitting. I felt like I didn't really want to work there. What I was nervous about was breaking up with them. I couldn't tell them really, so first I changed it to freelance, and then I would trying to raise my price so they wouldn't book me anymore. So there was a gradual phasing out. I was used to having no money. For my entire college years, I had no money at all. I hadn't had money for 5-6 years. I was used to living on literally nothing. My rent is nothing. So for me, it didn't feel like a risk because I didn't want to be a designer anyway. I was like, let's just do something. And in hindsight, I'm glad I did it when I was that young.
This is an interesting thing because if you are a young designer, young product, whatever, you're starting off and you're interested in building products, you're interested in this field, and I think a lot of us, maybe it's not so clear whether you're really interested in it or whether you just find that this work is interesting. You find that you can get paid doing it. And when you're that age, you're just still trying to find yourself. I mean, you and I are still trying to figure out what we're doing too. So
I think that's a really big point you just made. I will tell you 100% honestly, I didn't care about design. I saw it as a way to make money. I was excited about the idea of just having a company. I was like, oh, that's kind of more like me. That's more like my thing. Yeah. I don't care about doing this design stuff. And it was accidental that I started getting better and better at the design thing. And that, companies were excited to have me there. That was more like a game, right? I just wanted to be really good at it then, but I didn't care that much about it.
There's this thing that can happen to you early in your career, and certainly happened to me, where you start working for a big company or you start working for a company of some kind, and you're learning things at the company. There's this effect where people who are around you maybe respect that job. They're like, yeah, that makes sense. I was working at Oakley or then working at Microsoft. People are like, oh, that makes sense. I've heard that's cool. You're working at that. And you work with people who work at the company. And everybody is kind of encouraged to share these same values about what success looks like. And success often looks like you kind of climb up the ladder. You improve your skills at this maybe very narrow set of things that a big company wants you to do in the way that they define design or product or whatever. You start to get into this tunnel. To take it back to tunnel world, you start to get in this tunnel where you're just trying to follow that path. And I think one thing that's interesting. I mean, it's not that that's terrible. It's not awful to be working in a company. You can learn a lot, but it does become harder and harder to break away. I think it becomes harder and harder, that painful feeling that you've felt. And anytime you're taking a risk, it's going to feel painful. But the longer you've spent in the tunnel and the more comfortable you've gotten in that tunnel, it gets harder to get out of there.
I know.
And so it's kind of cool. So you break away, you start Aj&Smart. Like, what was the plan for how to run it once you realize this thing is sticking and working? Because I know that it's changed shape over time and it's not the same thing today that it was in the beginning. So describe like how you and the other two co-founders pictured this company.
So Alex quit straight away.
Okay.
Like myself and Michael came to the ultimatum that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. No half-assing it, right? Let's actually all quit our jobs or let's just not do it. And so both myself and Michael really did quit our jobs. Alex, who was actually being pretty smart because it did take a while for us to make money, he was just like, nah, that doesn't sound like a good idea. So he was out already within the first, like as soon as the first project was gone. And then it was just myself and Michael. We didn't have a plan. We were extremely naive. And I'm so glad that myself and Michael met because we're both just as stupid as he. Like, he's stupid for doing what he did by starting Aj&Smart. I'm just as stupid. Neither of us thought about it at all. First of all, we didn't know about design agencies, so we didn't know what a design agency was, so we didn't have anyone to compare with, and we also didn't bother Googling any other design agencies. We're super ignorant.
Is that literally true? Is that literally true? You did
100%
Okay.
true. The best moment that actually happened to prove it was like 4 years into Aj&Smart, we had a coach come in. Her name is Julia. She's really great. And she was like, so you guys, like, you have competition. You have this company IXDS around the corner. And I was like, who's IXDS? And she's like, those guys are your direct competition. They're taking your clients. And I was like, never heard of them, right? We were super ignorant, like insanely ignorant. We didn't look at the competition. And that's actually something Jason Fried talks about as well, which kind of like comforted me in rework. He talks about like ignoring the competition. And I think that we built a company the way we are today, a company that people enjoy working at, and a company that kind of differentiated itself from other agencies because we didn't know what it was to work in a design agency. We didn't know what it looked like inside a design agency. And we didn't know how they sold stuff or what their business models were. Later on, when we started training design agencies, on how to be more digital and all this kind of stuff and how to make products, then I got a glimpse inside design agencies and I was like, fucking hell, I'm glad we didn't try to do that. Like, I don't want to run something like that. I don't want to have 100 sad people like hating their lives, pumping out like tiny portions of a big car company project. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound entertaining to me at all.
So the whole measure for you at first, the way that you kind of, reaching out with your fingertips, trying to figure out what to do was, can we find more business?
Yeah, I think it was just, can we get more money? Can we get another client? I guess the important thing, what Michael did that kind of let this happen, was that he found us a little office space, which wasn't an office space, it was more like a desk inside an accelerator within Berlin, a company that's creating startups. We basically put up a sign that said, Aj&Smart UX design agency, and then we had like whiskey tastings every week. And people just were like, oh, UX. Oh, yeah, I've been hearing about this UX thing, like reading about that on TechCrunch. By the way, seriously, man, UX, the term, really did kick off like pretty recently. People talking about UX as like creating digital mobile products.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you want to get into it now, but...
No, let's skip it. But it's not like the people in Germany are reading some German tech blogs. They're reading TechCrunch. They're reading the same shit that you guys are reading, and UX starts to emerge.
I was on a team called the UX team in like 2000.
2000, okay. Then actually you got me. There's nothing I can say to that.
I'm old, Jonathan. Don't try to mess with old people. You got to learn your place, kid.
Let's say it didn't get mainstream enough for people to care about like spending money on agencies doing UX. I mean, it took about 5 years before other design agencies started contacting us and like going, hey, can we buy you guys? Because we don't have a UX department. And we were like, hell no. But that's another story. So basically, we put up a sign, UX design agency. The whole Berlin startup scene was about to kick off, which was amazing timing. And of course, like these companies realize that once the startup scene started to take off, they realize, okay, we need to look for UX designers. Okay, where are all the UX designers? Fucking nobody in Berlin, like literally nobody in Berlin doing UX design. just AJ&Smart, a UX design agency. And so people started contacting us. And basically, just to be really honest, it was the people in that building were our clients for the first 2 years. There was the Startup Accelerator, and then there was Rocket Internet, which is like a huge startup accelerator in Berlin. And they were just like one floor up. So our first 2 years of clients, and the reason we kept AJ&Smart open was because the work was just there. We didn't know how to price it. We didn't know what to do. It was really difficult and really stressful to figure out what kind of company we were. But we got our revenue for the first 2 years out of that.
And you must have gotten a lot of reps, right? You got a lot of repetition working with. Did
Yeah.
you do a lot of projects those first 2 years?
Oh, yeah. And also we were running them all in parallel the way we don't do it anymore. We worked on every different type of project you can possibly imagine. And we learned a lot too, because often, even in these startups with like 300 people, we were the only people in there who were kind of considered the product strategists as well. So we were working like directly with the product managers on creating conversion optimization experiments and filling up the backlog, dealing with the developers. We got to learn the entire product process extremely quickly from start to finish. And this already gave us a huge advantage over other designers. So because we were the external consultants after opening this tiny ass company, we really got to see it from like a bird's eye view. Like people would bring us in and they'd say, yeah, well, we're having trouble. The product team is not able to produce these things, or, you know, the conversion rate is really low, or we're not getting enough signups. And essentially we were doing what is called like growth hacking today. We were doing like UX/growth hacking projects for these companies for years, and just getting so many different reps in there and so many different projects and a lot of stress.
Yeah, but that's an interesting thing too, because when you're in-house on a team, you might have a higher fidelity picture of the map of what the company's doing, how the company makes decisions, what the business opportunities are, but you might not.
Right.
And you actually get that perspective from the outside. If you're in an agency, you were getting that really fast. I mean, you were piling up all this experience that effectively took me like 20 years to get to in just a matter of a few years, which is really pretty cool.
But I mean, I also missed out on like super detail, you know, I mean, I wasn't working on one project for 3 years, so I saw every detail of it. It was more like, you know, here's a project, we need to get this thing out. Okay, I literally did every single screen, every single icon, every color, and also the UX, you know, the wireframes, and also the usability testing, and also sitting with the business owner and deciding what features should be in the product. It was really amazing, but of course, then I would be like out and on another project.
Yeah. There's something to be said for that, for seeing the product all the way through launch and managing those relationships when they're one-to-one relationships with your peers who are building the products. So there's definitely good stuff that, I mean, I think this is a question that folks have often asked me, like, should I, if I'm starting off my career, should I go big company? Should I go an agency? Should I go to a startup? And there are trade-offs either way. One thing I wanted to talk about, and this is, you know, my impression from talking to you earlier, is that the first sort of take on Aj&Smart, once it started going and started to get traction, was that this would be sort of almost like a lifestyle business for you guys. So talk more about that. What did that mean?
I never tell the story of Aj&Smart, so I forget all these interesting things. So yeah, myself and my co-founder, the reason why we started it, right at the start of it, I had read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, of course, like everybody else. And I was like, that's what I want. I want an automated business that makes money for me on the side while I'm on a beach. And so from day one, myself and my co-founder took crazy holidays. Like we would shut down the company for 3 months. Even in the first 4 or 5 years, we would just shut the entire thing down and like really, really take it easy. That kind of started changing for me around 2 years ago, where I was just like, it didn't feel sustainable. It felt like every time we took those breaks, we would come back and have money trouble and have to, you know, find clients again and do all that kind of thing. And for me, I think having the taste of the lifestyle business life, I didn't feel the drive for it somehow. I started to lose interest.
That is a fascinating, I want to hear a little bit more about this, because I certainly read the 4-Hour Workweek too when that came out. It's a fascinating book. So much good stuff in there. So many assumption challenging or default challenging ideas in there. And one of the ideas is this lifestyle business thing that he talks about in the book. To me personally, the examples he gives struck me as almost a little scammy. Like he's got a thing where he sells like
Brain Quicken.
Yeah, it's like vitamins for your brain. I don't know. Sounds a little scammy. And the idea was kind of you set up some kind of side business, and Tim Ferriss had done this, and then you can sort of do whatever you want. You can retire now. That was one part of the book that, like, it's intriguing, but to me, it just never kind of rung true. Like, would I actually be happy with, with a life like that? And set aside whether I could come up with something that people would want that would sort of perpetuate itself, which I probably couldn't. But was that actually fun to lead a life like that, where money's coming in, you're not really all in, you're not really like investing your effort. You experienced that. What was the emotional state like? I mean, did it end up being about having to kickstart the money, or what was that like?
The thing is, like, especially if it's a service business, what ends up happening is it just never felt like there was progress, because for progress, you kind of need to put in the work to have this machine gain momentum on its own. And it would keep losing momentum every time we just like went off and just did like, okay, now I'm doing my 2 months in Thailand, and now I'm doing this, and now I'm doing that. And it just never felt like it wasn't really a challenge anymore. It felt like you're just like 2 freelancers or 3 freelancers doing the work. And I just got bored. That's as simple as it is. It got boring for me. It felt like there was no purpose anymore. And I hate the word like purpose and passion, but it just didn't feel like there was any point, right? It was just boring. Like, I remember 3 years ago, and a couple of the Aj&Smart employees listening to this will also remember this. There was like 5 of us there. We had done some projects, some money had come in, and myself and Kyle ended up playing Metal Gear Solid 5. So you can put this in like, it's like 3 years ago. We ended up playing a video game for like a full month. And it was like a 40 to 50 hour game. So we were just playing it every day because we were just like, I don't feel like working like this month, and just kind of did that. It was really fun, and it's really fun to look back on it. But at the same time, in the back of my mind, I was like, but this is not really sustainable, and this is not going to be the thing. Like, I started to not give a shit about Aj&Smart. I started to look at other things that I wanted to do. Whereas today, like, it's super challenging. It wasn't challenging. I guess for me, I want to be challenged, and I want to feel like there's constant progress and growth. And these lifestyle businesses, the assumption is that you're kind of like satisfied with this thing running on the side and making you like a couple of thousand. If you're the type of person who makes that in the first place, you're never going to be satisfied about it, believe me. If you're the person who can make money like that on the side, you're already a driven animal who wants to keep going. And so for me, I kind of changed gears. I guess it was like November 2016 or something like that. And actually it was like my co-founder he was on a 6-month sabbatical because he had just had a new kid, which is, by the way, I think super great that we actually do that, like that we kind of built that lifestyle into the start of the business. And in that time, I scaled the company from about 6 people to 18 people very quickly. That was actually the year that I met you, right? That was like last February or something. So I completely changed my mind. I said, no, I don't want it to be like this. I don't want it to be a lifestyle business. I don't want it to be this small thing that's like always kind of just like a half side project. I want to go all in. And that's when we kind of exploded and scaled up and got to what we are now, which has its own challenges, but I prefer this to the kind of half-assed version that it was.
Was there a moment when you had that realization? Was there some like key insight or event that spurred it on?
I think it was just years of not being satisfied, and it like reached a lack of satisfaction maximum point. I was reading Tools of Titans, another Tim Ferriss book. I mean, Tim Ferriss's books are actually life-changing. And I don't know, somehow it gave me the courage to kind of do the thing I really wanted to do, which was really try to do this company thing and build it the way that I actually felt like building it, and not be scared of, the consequences of having 20 employees, which we have now. The momentum was crazy that was created by this. And it also gave me the motivation to really just like go crazy and try everything in those 6 months. It was really fun.
I know Michael Smart, your partner, and I wonder if, not to throw Michael under the bus, but there can be tension when you want to do something and you have a business partner, you have someone who works on it with you. It can be harder to change direction. It can be harder sometimes to assert, this is the voice or the vision for this thing that I want to have. How did that play out? How did this shift from this is a lifestyle business to this is a business that I really want to grow in this way that you were, I know you don't like the word passion, but you're kind of describing passion without using the word. How did that shift go down with Michael?
The good thing is that we didn't have like so much money that I would have been like destroying the last 6 years of work that we had worked towards. It wasn't so successful that it mattered so much.
Yeah.
And Michael was, like I said, he was on his sabbatical. I couldn't contact him by phone anyway. It was just like free reign. I just went for it. I didn't ask. I just did it. And with myself and Michael, there's very little friction. We're both super chilled. We both have different approaches to running the business. Michael's really good with detail. He's really good with like getting into the details of how the company is running in a way that I'm really terrible at. And I'm good with the bigger picture vision kind of stuff. Or at least maybe it's not that I'm good at it. It's just that I spend my free time thinking of it, right? That's probably the difference. And when he came back, obviously he was like, holy shit.
Who are all these people?
Fuck? Yeah, it was literally like that. I remember there's a photograph. I can't remember. Michael came back on like sometime in March. And I had already hired a lot of people that were going to start over the next few months. And there's like this photograph of all of us sitting there in a big circle, like something like 14 of us, which is like 3 times the size of the company was. It was hilarious. It was just like, it just happened. I had been also running a lot of events, like free live events. Aj&Smart in those 6 months went from being an unknown company to like a lot of people knowing Aj&Smart because we started our social media channels. I just went like fully all in, guns blazing. I'm going to do this thing right now and I'm just going to go all in and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, I don't give a shit. I'm going to do something different.
Well, so far, it seems like it's really working. I mean, you guys have attracted amazing clients, especially given how short the period of time has been that you've been in this mode of saying, well, I'm all in on this business. You guys have clients like Lufthansa and Adidas and Lego. I'm just like brands that everybody's heard of. And that's kind of astonishing. I mean, I think partly one of those things where you look at the amount of time that you've been in this like really active growth mode and it's 2 years, less than 2 years. I mean, it's not a long period of time.
It's actually 1 year because it started in January 2017, sorry.
It's insane. Like that just doesn't happen, but it's not overnight because there's all of this stuff that led up to it. There's all of this practice. There's this development of this sort of reputation and this skill set for both executing the work and also selling the work. You've been selling for years and years. But one of the things that has set you apart from other agencies, and I want to talk about a little bit whether it was intentional or not, is that you have a different recipe, it seems to me, for the way Aj&Smart spends its effort. You are heavily invested in social media. You're making videos all the time. You're on Instagram all the time. You've got these Facebook pages. You've got a significant portion of your team that's doing that stuff. You've been training teams from the get-go, training teams on how to apply design in a different way. All those things, they come at a cost. I mean, you can't have half of your team building the reputation and training people and have the same size teams working on design projects as other agencies. You can't have, if you have 20 people, you got to decide where they go. You can't know how to build out the team. You've decided to invest in different things than other people have invested in. Your website is a piece of garbage.
It's an actual shit.
For a design agency to have a website that is as thin as yours is and still have the success and the customers that you have is unbelievable. Talk a little bit about why you take such a different approach, if you can, and like where did that idea come from? Or is it another one of these things that is just an accident that just happened because you weren't thinking about the competition, you were just doing what made sense to you? What happened?
I think partly it was an accident. I decided that we should do a lot of free events to get people excited about who Aj&Smart are, to open us up, to like be able to hire more people. And I noticed that people were like always shocked and excited about our attitudes. Like they would always come up to us and say, oh God, you guys are so entertaining. It's so fun to come and visit your office. We always have student groups coming, doing tours of agencies in Berlin. And they write like these cute little case studies afterwards. And they always mention the best part of their visit was Aj&Smart. This for me is like, holy shit, that's really cool. We have something special here. And I wanted to get it out. I wanted people to see what it is like in Aj&Smart for real, like unfiltered. Because if you look at our website, we look so boring and formal. So I thought like instead of putting effort into the website, I'm going to just do this on YouTube and Instagram. And like I believed that we would be able to break through the noise because there's not so many design agencies who don't take themselves seriously. Most of the design agencies, most designers, they'll take themselves so fucking seriously. They're all like super arrogant or they're trying to be really mysterious. We're just like, here's exactly what we're doing. Hello. And so we're just like kind of unpretentious. And I thought that showing this to the world would excite people. The truth is though, like you're right, we only have out of the 20 people in Aj&Smart, probably like 7 are billable. Like as in there's 7 people in Aj&Smart propping up the entire company, right? And this is a risk that we are taking on purpose. Like it's written in a Google Doc that our strategy is to do it exactly like this, to really pump the social media platforms, to really spread the awareness of the company and disproportionately do that at the detriment of profit. We are hurting our profit margins horribly because we're doing this, but I believe it's the right way to do it.
It sounds like it comes from a few things. I mean, my outside perspective would be, and from hearing you talk about it, your confidence to make that investment partly came from hearing that when people visited your office, that there was something special about the culture there that stood out. Now, I've visited your office. I mean, that totally rings true. It's a different feeling in there. It's like
the smell.
The smell hits you from outside the building. Even you smell it. It's fun. It's a place you don't want to leave. I almost missed my flight the last time I was there because it's so fun to hang out.
But it's authentic fun. It's not like us creating it to look fun. Just, we made it look like how we feel like, because I've walked into agencies where they have like, whoa, wacky beanbags. And they have like, those British signs, stay calm.
The British sign.
They're
I
like,
wish that,
yeah,
oh my God.
Stay calm and design. Ha, we're so wacky. I'm just like, oh, fuck off. Like, we're not trying to be wacky. We're just a bunch of people who kind of want to make jokes. And, like The Office is kind of represents that a little bit.
It's a weird, very authentic,
stay calm, Jake.
Very, very unpretentious, very, very, very unpretentious vibe. And it's interesting that it stood out enough to people that you heard it reflected back and you knew that's something special. It strikes me from listening to this story that an obvious advantage you had was that you came from both a background of selling things for your whole life and being comfortable having those conversations with people where every time you sell something, you have to tell the story of why is this thing worth what I'm asking you to pay for it. Social media can be done so poorly and often is. What's different about the way you all are doing it is you're sharing information, you're making it fun, and you're telling stories over and over and over again. That stuff is also things that I imagine you got a lot of practice doing as you were working on film and being in the band, right? I mean, those are skills that, to talk about the Tools of Titans, I think I haven't read very much of it, but there's this one little part in there about, that's the guy who's the artist who created Dilbert. I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Adam Gilbert? No, it isn't.
Is his name Dilbert? Let's say his name's Dilbert.
It's Dilbert.
Scott something. Anyway, he's talking about how...
Scott Adams.
Scott Adams. So he's talking about how if you have a few different skills, now you don't have to be the best at anything, but if you start to layer over like 2 or 3 different skills that you're pretty good at, then all of a sudden you're unique. And he said for him, it was like, he's not the best artist. He's not the funniest person as like a stand-up comic, but he is good enough at those 2 things. And then like the third thing I think he talks about might be public speaking or something like that. But then all of a sudden it becomes like really special. And then he had this expertise. He had worked in tech companies and he knew that. And then all of a sudden that combination of those 3 or 4 above average things becomes incredibly unique. That certainly rings true for me because I was never the best designer. I was never the smartest product person. But a combination
Still a
of
dumbass.
a dumbass, basically. I'm not the best writer, but a combination of a few of those things starts to become really special if you can kind of recognize those things and then follow it. And I know, again, you don't like the word passion, but start to follow your passion. So what's interesting here, reflecting back on what you've said, is I think you have a lot of different skill sets, but you were self-aware enough to notice when the lifestyle business thing started to drive you crazy, when you started to follow and like really invest heavily in making Aj&Smart something that was growing and make progress on it and seek out a challenge, that you were also aware enough to see what makes us special, what are the things I'm excited about, and find those things that, matched up. Those started to be really different from the way other agencies are working.
Yeah. And I think that's also what makes it really clear to me. The difference is that when I do talk to people working in other agencies, first, if it's their first time getting exposed to Aj&Smart on social media, they'll hate it. They'll be like, that's just stupid. Like, I'm not learning anything here. Like, we'll literally get messages from people saying, yeah, what is this? I want to learn. If I wanted to see stupid stuff, I would watch a meme account or something. And we just reply like, this is not for you. We're doing this for ourselves. We enjoy doing this. And we genuinely do. There's always been this pushback on Aj&Smart. If you look at our YouTube channel comments, we have people who really, really, really love us, but also people from the normal world expecting the normal design agency thing. I think a normal design agency owner isn't going to write an article called User Research is Overrated just in case it's not right, just in case it doesn't turn out to be right. I couldn't give less of a shit, right? If it turns out to be completely wrong, great, then somebody prove me wrong, continue. But I'm happy to have this honest and open dialogue with people who are kind of interested in what we're doing. And I think I think it's created a unique audience of fans for us. And obviously a lot of these fans then become clients, right? These people who are I want to work with the company that's actually just saying the things that a normal human would say. And they're not writing the word empathy in all caps and posting that on Instagram and just thinking that's deep. For me, it's important that we stay authentic at the risk of people hating us, which is fine. And I enjoy that. I actually love meeting people who say, yeah, I listened to the podcast, but I was just too silly and whatever. I just stopped listening to it. I'm like, that's totally fine. You're not the person who is maybe the target of this. Thousands of other people who actually do enjoy listening to this podcast, which is silly, which isn't just about, straight up information. And I think that the problem is, and maybe the danger is when you're creating a company or when you're doing something, is that you try to do what other people are doing and you try to go along with the status quo. You don't want to burn bridges. You want to get awards. You want to do all this kind of shit. But in the end, you're just like everyone else and it's super hard to compete then. It's really easy for Aj&Smart to compete in a saturated commodity design market because we stand out like a sore thumb, right? Aj&Smart stands out like a really strange thing that nobody understands. That's really great. I love it.
It's such a truth that if you are trying to compete with what everybody else is doing, where everybody else is, there's a ton of competition and it's actually really hard, even though it's the obvious path. It's the simplest thing to see what's going on there. The simplest thing to do is to say, all of our competitors are there, or even, I admire what those people are doing. I want to do it like them. Those spaces are really crowded and it's very difficult to be different.
Yeah.
A lot of times the things that are actually the most fun to do because they're the closest to your heart, no one's doing it or almost no one's doing it. And the competition for the things that were the most fun to do, the most enjoyable, there's not that much competition. Nobody else was even trying to do it. And it's really interesting to see how that's true for you as an individual and also as a business with, design agencies, something that if you're a designer, even if you have never worked at a design agency, you can't help but be familiar with that world, what that means to design and how strong that vision of what a design agency should be and what design should be is in everybody's mind. And so it seems like Aj&Smart kind of comes from you just kind of doing what made sense to you.
Yeah, it's still tricky. It's still scary to see how much it costs to run a business like this every month. We still have the same problems that other agencies have in terms of keeping the cash running through. It's still not perfect. I don't want people to think oh my God, Jonathan figured everything out. I am still struggling on a lot of fronts when it comes to, let's say, it's fine. I can run this business for the next few years just fine, but making it a sustainable long-term business is very difficult. And this is the kind of thing that's what my day job is just trying to figure out 5 years from now, why does this company still exist? Why do people still book us? What the hell is it that we're offering? And so that's the month to month and day to day tricky thing is having that much money going out with our current strategy of, having a very small amount of people actually making the money for the entire company. I've built a risky business, but I think it's, hey, risky business. I built it. I think I've been...
risky business is what we should call this section.
Yeah, that's risky business. I love it.
Risky business, yeah.
Risky business. Michael always listens to these episodes. I should say thanks to Michael for letting me also take these big ass risks because I think it could be the other way around where I have a co-founder who is just well, clearly that makes no business sense. Well, because it doesn't. Let's not do it. But Michael's usually pretty chilled about all these things. And I'm also mostly chilled about all the things he wants to do. So it's tricky to find that sort of a partnership, I think.
Yeah. And Michael is a person who is very authentic, kind of grounded, calm, but also very positive, right? I mean, I can't help but think that his influence on, although you're usually the one flapping your trap in the videos, Michael's influence on the culture and on what you see when you walk into that office seems huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that kind of brings us to maybe like a point where we talk about what's next. You said over the next 5 years, there's this big challenge to figure out why does this exist? And sometimes there's a danger in finding product market fit for yourself as an individual or for your company. And you're like, oh my God, now we're doing this thing. People expect it. There's people depending on it because they work here. Am I into this? Is this actually really what I want to be doing?
Yeah.
This is the thing about being a founder that personally turns me off. Like I think of this idea of like, wow, now the thing's going. Now you're committed to it for years and years and years. How do you feel about that success or that, okay, this thing's sticking now. You invested in it. It's working. It's sticking enough that you're going to have to answer those questions. Is that who you want to be? Jonathan, business monster versus Jonathan, filmmaker? What goes on in your head?
I don't really trust myself as an individual creative going out on my own and trying to make like a movie or something like that. I feel like the balance for me will be having the company at a state where it's like stable, right? Where we don't have like cash flow worries, where we do have strategic thinking happening within the company, not just at the founder level. And I think that's a problem that every founder has, right? How does the company run without the founders? This is what we're looking at in 2018. If I would just like leave right now for 6 months, how does the company look 6 months from now? Today, it would probably be the same company when I get back in 6 months, which is great. It would kind of probably stay in the same position, but I'm trying to make it so that it actually grows. And let's say in terms of like quality and in terms of like different products that we can offer, I think if I can get it to that point this year, I would look for a way to balance my creative needs with the company, and I would try to use the company for that. So if we get to a point where we're like quite financially comfortable, I would definitely be pulling the sprint team and other people out for 2 weeks to 2 months at a time and working on different things, like working on video games, on different things. We actually tried this during our intense growth phase. It was crazy because we didn't have... During the growth phase, I also hadn't figured out exactly how to get the amount of clients that we could support that. So we did have some free time and we did a couple of like game projects. This was amazingly fun. And this is the kind of thing that I want to get back into. And it's just like definitely one of my goals. And am I afraid of being like trapped in this company? I really enjoy it. I don't stress about it. I don't lose any sleep about it. There's like zero stress in my life because of Aj&Smart. I really enjoy it. I don't think I have this sunk cost feeling where it's like, I just have to stay because I've already done it for 7 years or whatever. People probably think that I might have that feeling, but I definitely don't. If I was pissed with Aj&Smart, I would have so little problem just leaving. Seriously.
Well, this topic of how to balance creativity with the business and how to get comfortable with the business as the thing that you do. And I think that's a good topic for us for the future, because that's something I'm certainly thinking about all the time and trying to figure out for myself as an individual, I guess, entrepreneur now.
So maybe we should end this, huh?
Maybe we should. I want to recap.
End the founder cast.
The Risky Business Cast.
Oh, Risky Business Cast. Sorry.
Yeah. I wrote down some notes while you were talking. There's a few things, if somebody was listening to this, to remind them of kind of some key ideas. One of the key ideas that I took away from talking to you is the importance of reps. We talk about this when we're doing the sprint workshops. You need to get reps to get good at running sprints. You need to get reps to hone your product market sense, your sense of the customer. Sprints give you the chance to do that in the context of, a product process. But you got reps as a kid. You got reps when you were first starting off Aj&Smart working with startups. You got all these reps with running a business. And so a lot of the success that eventually comes from, I think, that long history of getting in a lot of practice. That's an important lesson to take away. This history you had of building your own thing, whether it was building businesses, building games for yourself, making movies, this idea that you build stuff and that you build the things that you're interested in building and you see what it's like to make something all the way through, I feel is really important. That's, for me, been a really important thing that I draw on from the time when I was a kid. I was making games myself. I was working on the school newspaper, doing things that were actually quite parallel to what you were doing. And for me, that long running sense of like, I know how to take a project from beginning to end and get it out in the world. And then I know how to sort of try to gauge whether that made sense to people, I think is a really important skill for people to learn. And it's clear that it's manifests itself now for you in Aj&Smart, but it obviously comes again from like a long history of things. This idea of being an overnight success almost, it looks like from the outside that this last year for you has been just amazing growth in both the size of the team and the clients and the reputation of the brand. I was struck by when we were on this tour recently, this last week, talking to people and they're like, oh, Aj&Smart, like that's easy for those guys. You would overhear almost people saying it's easy for those guys to say because you're already sort of like established as the leader, as like a design agency leader.
People keep saying that to me as well. I'm like, are you fucking serious?
It's crazy. But it's very clear from hearing the story, the growth has been really fast in the last year, but it's not an overnight success at all. You've been in business for 7 years. You've been doing the same things for your whole life. And it's because of that long, slow burn that the overnight success is possible. I think that is a crucial lesson for people because a lot of the Medium articles that we want to read, a lot of the Tim Ferriss-y kind of stuff, these life hacks, these like kind of like go, like social media. A lot of this stuff that's so catchy feels like there's shortcuts. I am less convinced that there are shortcuts. And your story is actually one of like a long road with explosive growth at the end, which is interesting. Another one is this idea of the agency giving you a bird's eye view. And this is an advantage of working in an agency that I had not previously thought of. Something that was really apparent to me, though, like reflecting back, working at Google Ventures, I was able to see inside what was going on in the company so much faster because I was an outsider. And if you've gone too long in your career working only inside product teams, you really can benefit from this outsider perspective. And then I guess the other thing is being careful of tunnel world. You talked about tunnel world, the actual business in the beginning, but you have at a few points in your life made this decision to not stay in the tunnel, to break out of it, even if it was comfortable, even if it was something that allowed you to take a lot of vacations and not have to work real hard and be able to play Metal Gear Solid 5 for a month.
Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain.
It's hard to break out of those tunnels. It's hard to not go for the thing that feels like the track that other people are on, feels like the track other people accept and encourage. Again, like you said, you don't like the word passion, but that is exactly what you ended up doing, following what was in your heart and then using those overlapping skills that were unique. So anyway, super interesting story, John. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you for interviewing me. I think that was, I didn't actually expect that to be what the episode was about. I wonder will anyone listen this far?
Probably not. And actually, I was thinking to close it off, this could be a good time for us to practice the Risky Business theme song. Maybe we could sing it now on the way out.
How about we sing the Risky Business outro and then separately we do the Product Breakfast Club outro. So we kind of sing Risky Business into the Product Breakfast Club outro.
So it's just like transitions into Product
so we,
Breakfast. Okay,
we
let's do
just
it.
kind of Risky Business.
Risky business.
Oh, wait, I have one funny thing to tell you.
Oh, okay.
Michael listened to the most recent episode of the podcast, last week's one, the 15-minute one, whatever. You know what his compliment for us was?
No.
Wow, the editor did a great job on that episode. Thanks, Mike.
Remember what I said about Michael being positive and creating such a... I take it back, Michael.
It was like, yeah, the editor just does such a great job getting rid of all the stuff in there. Jesus.
Come on, Mike. Getting rid of all the stuff. Well,
risky business.
Risky business.
Oh, bye-bye, everybody.
Product Breakfast Club.
Product Breakfast Club.
Bye, everybody.
Product Breakfast Club. Jesus,
you can find us online at JIce-Cream on Twitter and Instagram. That's John, and I'm at Jake K. You can sign up for the Sprint newsletter at
Product Breakfast Club.
And if you want to see the worst website ever, go to ajsmart.com.
Oh, I love that. All right. Bye-bye.